The silence of a dead phone line is the loudest sound you will ever hear. When the grid fails, when the social contract evaporates, and when the dispatcher no longer answers your desperate plea, the state monopoly on violence dissolves. At that precise moment, you become the sole guarantor of your continued existence. The modern world has conditioned you to outsource your safety to men in uniforms and the comforting illusion of a 911 call. This conditioning is a lethal weakness. The tactical industry knows this. The manufacturers of combat knives, plate carriers, and high-speed gear have built a multi-billion-dollar empire on your insecurity. The tactical industry sells you the fantasy of the operator, the soldier, the warrior. But you are not a soldier clearing a house in Fallujah. You are a civilian trying to survive a trip to a looted grocery store. A $300 combat knife is a liability, not an asset. If you pull a military-grade blade, you escalate the conflict immediately. You signal to the aggressor that you are a combatant. You signal that you have resources worth taking. Furthermore, knife fighting is a myth perpetuated by Hollywood and dojo instructors who have never felt the frantic, animalistic desperation of a real struggle. In reality, a knife fight is simply two people dying at different speeds. The loser dies on the pavement. The winner dies in the ambulance. You do not want a duel. You want to terminate the threat and vanish. To do this, you must abandon the tactical catalog and look at the debris of the office environment. You need weapons that cost $1, weapons that offer total plausible deniability, and weapons that exploit the laws of physics to devastating effect. The most dangerous weapon in a non-permissive environment is the one nobody sees until it is too late.
Consider the stainless steel ballpoint pen. To the untrained eye, it is a tool for signing contracts. To the survivalist who understands mechanics and anatomy, it is a hardened steel penetrator disguised as innocuous clutter. The effectiveness of the pen relies on a fundamental principle of physics known as pressure. Pressure is defined as force divided by area. A blunt object spreads force over a wide area, causing bruising. A pen concentrates the entire force of your adrenaline-fueled strike into a tip less than 1 millimeter in diameter. This allows a person of average strength to generate thousands of pounds of pressure per square inch at the point of impact. The tactical industry wants you to focus on the sharpness of a blade edge. Physics dictates that structural integrity is superior to sharpness in a chaotic melee. A cheap plastic knife will snap. A stainless steel barrel pen, such as the Zebra F701, or a similar unbranded metal tube, is a rigid column designed to withstand vertical compression. It will not bend. It will not break. It creates a puncture wound that does not close easily, unlike a clean surgical cut. When the social order collapses, infections kill as effectively as bullets, just much slower. A deep puncture wound from a dirty object introduces bacteria deep into the fascia, guaranteeing that even if the attacker survives the immediate encounter, the aggressor faces a grim prognosis without antibiotics. Target selection is the difference between annoyance and neutralization. The aggressor expects you to flail at the chest or stomach. The rib cage is a bone armor designed by millions of years of evolution to protect vital organs from blunt trauma. Striking the ribs with a pin is a waste of kinetic energy. You must target the soft tissues where the body has zero natural defense. The ocular cavity is the primary target. The human eye is a fluid-filled sac held in place by fragile muscles and nerves. It has no bone covering. A strike here triggers a primal, overriding psychological panic. The brain cannot ignore damage to the vision centers. Even a hardened criminal or a drug-fueled looter will instinctively recoil to protect their sight. This is the lizard brain taking over. This reaction buys you the most valuable resource in survival, which is time. Time to run. Time to strike again. If the eyes are shielded, the secondary target is the trachea. The neck is a highway of vital infrastructure totally exposed to the elements. The windpipe is cartilage, not bone. It is flexible but crushable. A forceful drive of a rigid steel pin into the suprasternal notch, the soft hollow at the base of the throat, interrupts the airflow. Breathing is not optional. When you disrupt the oxygen supply, the aggressor's body immediately shifts from attack mode to suffocation panic. The muscles lose oxygenation.
The aggression evaporates because the biological imperative to breathe overrides the social imperative to rob or hurt you. This is the doctrine of the gray man applied to weaponry. If you are stopped by a checkpoint run by a local militia or a remnant of the National Guard, a tactical knife will be confiscated. You might be detained. You will be flagged as a threat. But a pocket full of pens? A pocket full of pencils? These are invisible items. They pass through the filter of perception because they are mundane. The militia commander does not see a weapon. The commander sees office supplies. This invisibility allows you to carry your defense tool into high security zones, into shelters, and into evacuation centers where firearms and blades are strictly prohibited. But the pen is merely the beginning of the office arsenal. We must look at the psychological impact of fire and chemical blindness. The modern survivor must understand that deterrence is often more effective than kinetic force. If you can break the will of the attacker before physical contact is made, you have won a decisive victory without risking infection or injury. This brings us to the aerosol improvised device. You do not need military-grade pepper spray. Commercial pepper spray expires. The pressure seals fail. The nozzle clogs. Relying on a canister you bought 3 years ago is a gamble with your life. Instead, we look to the cleaning aisle and the hardware store for the components of blinding chemical warfare. Common wasp spray is often cited by amateur preppers as a substitute for pepper spray. This is a partial truth that often leads to failure. Wasp spray offers range, often shooting 20 feet or more, which is superior to most defensive sprays. However, the neurotoxins in wasp spray are designed to kill insects slowly. They do not always cause the immediate, blinding pain required to stop a human attacker instantly. We need immediate incapacitation. We need a solvent that attacks the mucous membranes and the fat layers of the eyes. The answer lies in high-concentration isopropyl alcohol. You likely have bottles of 91% rubbing alcohol or high-strength hand sanitizer in your desk drawer right now. The tactical industry sells you capsaicin-based sprays that function on pain reception. Alcohol functions on chemical dehydration. The human cornea is protected by a tear film, which consists of a lipid layer, an aqueous layer, and a mucin layer. This delicate chemical balance keeps the eye functioning. Alcohol is a lipid solvent. When a stream of 90% isopropyl alcohol strikes the ocular surface, it immediately dissolves the lipid barrier. It strips away the protective film and begins to dehydrate the corneal cells instantly. The reaction is not just pain, it is a chemical abrasion. The aggressor does not just feel a sting, the aggressor experiences the sensation of the eyeballs drying out and burning simultaneously. The panic induced by this sensation is absolute. Furthermore, alcohol is highly flammable. In a worst-case scenario where the mob is closing in, that spray bottle, combined with a lighter, becomes a short-range flamethrower. While I do not advise this as a primary tactic due to the risk of self-injury, thermodynamics does not care about safety regulations. Fire is the ultimate psychological barrier. No predator attacks while on fire. To deliver this chemical payload, do not throw the bottle. You must repurpose a high-pressure trigger sprayer. A standard spray bottle nozzle, adjusted to a direct stream setting, provides hydraulic pressure. It allows you to engage the target from 6 to 8 feet away. This distance is the reactionary gap. It is the minimum distance required to react to a lunge or a knife thrust. If you can blind the enemy outside of their striking range, you have won the engagement without ever putting your own flesh in jeopardy. But suppose the chemical option fails or the distance closes too rapidly. You are now in hand-to-hand range. You need a force multiplier that transforms your fist into a demolition tool. Look at the stack of magazines, newspapers, or printer paper on the desk. The uneducated masses see recyclable trash. The survivalist sees the raw materials for composite armor and blunt force trauma. Paper is weak because of its lack of density. It has low structural integrity when flat. However, if you tightly roll a thick, glossy magazine or a section of newspaper, you alter its physical properties completely. You are removing the air gaps and compressing the wood pulp fibers into a dense, solid cylinder. This is the principle behind the Millwall Brick, a stealth weapon used by soccer hooligans in the United Kingdom to bypass police searches. When you fold the paper effectively and grasp it in your fist, it becomes as hard as a baton made of oak or hickory. Density is the mother of impact. Striking an attacker with a bare fist carries the risk of the boxer's fracture, a break in the metacarpal bones of the hand. The human hand is a complex instrument for gripping, not a hammer for smashing skulls. When you grip the rolled magazine, you solidify the hand. The roll acts as a splint, supporting the bone structure. When you strike, the paper absorbs the equal and opposite reaction force described by Newton's third law, protecting your hand while transferring the full kinetic energy into the target. Use the hardened edge of the rolled paper to hammer down onto the clavicle. The collarbone is the circuit breaker of the upper body. It takes very little force, roughly 7 to 8 pounds of pressure, to fracture the clavicle. Once this bone snaps, the structural support for the shoulder girdle collapses. The aggressor can no longer lift that arm. The arm becomes a useless dead weight. A broken clavicle eliminates the ability to throw a punch or wield a weapon with that side of the body. You have mechanically disabled the threat. If the situation demands lethal force and you are unarmed, you must look to the scissors. But do not use them as a pair. A pair of scissors is designed to shear paper, not penetrate dense muscle and fabric. The pivot point is a weak spot that will snap under lateral stress. You must disassemble the tool. Unscrew the center screw or break the rivet. You now possess 2 independent, high-strength steel shanks. One half of a scissor pair is a terrifying weapon. It features a sharp point for puncture and a broad, flat edge that creates a wide wound channel. Unlike a knife, which often has a thin spine, the scissor blade is thick and triangular. This geometry makes it incredibly resistant to bending. When driven with force, it separates muscle fibers and punctures organs with ease. The target for the improvised shank is the femoral artery. The femoral artery runs down the inside of the thigh. It is a large diameter pipeline carrying a massive volume of oxygenated blood. It is often covered only by denim or thin fabric. A puncture here causes a rapid drop in blood pressure. Hypovolemic shock sets in within seconds. The brain is starved of oxygen. The aggressor will lose consciousness rapidly, often before they even realize the severity of the wound. This is not about cruelty. This is about the physics of hydraulics. To stop a machine, you cut the power. The human body is a machine, and blood is the power. However, close-quarters combat with a blade is messy and dangerous. It exposes you to the blood of the attacker and the risk of blood-borne pathogens. Distance remains superior. This brings us to the computer peripherals. The laptop power supply is essentially a flail waiting to be deployed. A standard laptop charger consists of a heavy brick containing a transformer and capacitors, connected by a thick, shielded cord. Centrifugal force turns a power brick into a wrecking ball. By holding the cord and swinging the heavy transformer brick, you generate angular momentum. The velocity at the tip of the swing is significantly higher than the speed of your hand. When that heavy plastic and metal block connects with the skull or the temple, it delivers a concussive impact capable of knocking a grown man unconscious. The cord itself acts as a flexible weapon. In a grapple, the cord becomes a garrote. It can be wrapped around a limb to control the movement of the attacker, or used to bind the hands of a neutralized threat. The high tensile strength of modern electronic cables is designed to prevent fraying. This same durability makes them nearly impossible to snap by hand. But let us move from the desk to the hallway. Every commercial building, every office, and every school is mandated by government code to house the ultimate urban combat system. You walk past it every day without acknowledging its lethal potential. I am speaking of the fire extinguisher. The safety industry markets the fire extinguisher purely for fire suppression. The survivalist recognizes it as a multi-stage weapon system combining chemical warfare, obscuration, and blunt force trauma. Most standard units are ABC dry chemical extinguishers filled with monoammonium phosphate. This is a fine yellow powder discharged at high pressure. The first stage of the attack is the chemical blind. When you pull the pin and squeeze the trigger, you are not just spraying powder. You are unleashing a blinding cloud that expands instantly to fill the immediate space. If you discharge this directly into the face of an aggressor, the monoammonium phosphate acts as a severe irritant to the mucous membranes. It coats the throat and lungs, triggering violent, debilitating coughing spasms. It coats the eyes, forcing them shut. You have stolen the enemy's vision and oxygen simultaneously. This creates a tactical advantage known as obscuration. The aggressor cannot see you, but the aggressor also cannot breathe. While the threat is choking and blinded, struggling to clear the airway, you move to the second stage. The cylinder itself is a heavy steel bludgeon. A 5-pound or 10-pound fire extinguisher is essentially a sledgehammer. Do not drop it after spraying. Grip the bottom of the cylinder and use the nozzle end as a striking face. Drive the steel canister into the skull or the collarbone of the blinded target. The combined weight of the steel and the remaining pressurized contents creates massive kinetic energy transfer. Physics dictates that mass times acceleration equals force. You have the mass. You provide the acceleration. The result is shattered bone. Now, reach into your pocket. You likely have a set of keys. The self-defense industry and clueless internet gurus have lied to you about how to use them. They tell you to place the keys between your fingers, like the claws of a wild animal or a comic book character. This is the Wolverine myth, and it will break your hand. If you place keys between your fingers and strike a solid object, such as a human skull or a sternum, the physics of leverage works against you. The key acts as a lever. The base of the key digs into the soft tissue between your fingers. The force of the impact twists the key, tearing the skin and potentially fracturing your own metacarpals. You will damage your own hand more than the aggressor. You effectively disarm yourself through incompetence. You must adopt the hammer grip. Hold the key fob or the bulk of the keys firmly in your palm. Select the longest, sharpest key, usually a car key or a front door key, and position it so it protrudes from the top of your fist, extending past your thumb. Lock your thumb down over the key to secure it. This reinforces the structure. Now, when you strike, the force travels down the key and into the meat of your palm, which is padded by muscle and braced by the arm bone. You have turned your fist into a chisel. Use a hammer fist motion to drive this point into the target. Do not aim for the chest. Aim for the temple, the ear, or the side of the neck. A key is not a knife, it is a tearing instrument. The jagged teeth of the key are designed to manipulate tumblers in a lock, but on human skin, they act as a saw. A strike with a key does not produce a clean cut. It produces a ragged, painful laceration that bleeds profusely. The psychological shock of seeing one's own blood flow from a jagged wound often breaks the will to fight. If you are trapped in a room with no exit, you must change the geometry of the engagement. Look at the furniture. The standard four-legged chair is not just a seat. It is a tool for maintaining distance and controlling space. This is the principle used by lion tamers for a century. A lion tamer does not hold a chair to sit down. The tamer holds the chair with the legs facing the lion. Why does this work? It exploits the cognitive processing of the predator. The lion sees 4 separate points of the chair legs approaching simultaneously. The brain of the animal attempts to track all 4 points at once and becomes overwhelmed. It cannot decide which point to attack, causing hesitation. A human aggressor functions on the same predatory logic. When you pick up a chair and thrust the legs toward the attacker, you create a physical barrier of roughly 3 feet. This is your fortress. The aggressor cannot reach you with a knife or a fist without impaling themselves on the chair legs. If the attacker tries to grab one leg, you twist the chair violently. The torque generated by the wide base of the chair rips the leg from their grip or twists their wrist. You do not swing the chair like a baseball bat. That is slow and leaves you open. You use the chair like a spear. You thrust it forward. You jam the legs into the gut, the groin, or the face of the oncoming threat. If the aggressor has a knife, the chair absorbs the slashes. The plastic or wood of the furniture sacrifices itself to save your arteries. In a survival scenario, every object is expendable. You are not. Finally, we must address the most readily available flexible weapon, the belt. Most men wear a belt with a heavy metal buckle. In a sudden altercation, removing the belt takes precious seconds. You must practice this motion until it is fluid. Whip the belt off and wrap the leather strap around your hand, leaving about 18 inches of strap with the heavy metal buckle swinging free. You have just constructed a flail. The physics here is similar to the laptop charger, but the aerodynamics are superior. The belt strap cuts through the air with less resistance, allowing for higher tip velocity. The metal buckle is a dense, irregular object. When it strikes, it does not bounce, it digs. A strike to the top of the head with a heavy brass or steel buckle will split the scalp instantly. Scalp wounds bleed blindingly fast. Blood runs into the eyes of the attacker, obscuring their vision. However, the belt has a weakness. It requires space to swing. In a grapple, it is useless as a striking weapon. If the enemy closes the distance, you must immediately switch tactics. Drop the flail concept and use the belt as a strangulation tool or a binding agent. Adaptability is the hallmark of the survivor. The amateur clings to one strategy. The survivor flows from one weapon to the next as the laws of physics and the geometry of the fight dictate. Now, look at what is likely in your hand or on your desk right now: the ceramic coffee mug. The beverage industry sells you a vessel for comfort and caffeine. Physics sees a thermal grenade encased in shrapnel. A standard cup of coffee is served at approximately 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature is well above the threshold for instant scalding. The skin begins to sustain first-degree burns at 118 degrees. At 160 degrees, skin destruction is nearly instantaneous. This is your opening move. Liquids are fluid projectiles. When you throw the contents of the mug into the face of the aggressor, you are weaponizing thermodynamics. The heat shock causes an immediate, involuntary contraction of the facial muscles and the eyelids. The target cannot keep their eyes open. The pain is disorienting. It overrides the cognitive process of the attack plan. For that split second, the predator is blind and in agony. But the weapon is not empty. You are still holding the handle of a ceramic vessel. Ceramic is an incredibly hard material, often ranking higher on the Mohs hardness scale than steel, though it is more brittle. Upon impact with the skull, the mug will shatter. Do not view this as a failure of the weapon. This is the deployment of the secondary edge. When the cup breaks, it leaves a jagged, irregular handle in your fist. This is now an improvised push dagger. The edges of broken ceramic are microscopically sharp, capable of slicing through skin and fabric with zero resistance. You follow the splash immediately with a drive of the broken handle into the facial structure. The combination of thermal shock and laceration creates a sensory overload that few individuals can withstand. Let us move to the most underrated weapon in the urban environment, the high-lumen flashlight. I am not telling you to buy a $300 tactical strobe from a military surplus store. The lighting industry wants you to believe you need special ops gear. You do not. You simply need lumens. A standard high-intensity LED flashlight found at any hardware store is sufficient. The weapon here is not the aluminum casing, but the light itself. The human eye requires time to adjust to changes in light levels. This process involves the chemical breakdown and regeneration of rhodopsin in the rod cells of the retina. Sudden, high-intensity light acts as a photonic wall. In a low-light environment, such as a parking garage or a dimly lit street, the pupils of the aggressor are dilated to capture maximum light. If you blast 500 to 1,000 lumens directly into those dilated pupils, you bleach the rhodopsin instantly. The result is flash blindness. The aggressor sees only a whiteout. Their brain loses all visual data. This disrupts the OODA loop. The OODA loop stands for observe, orient, decide, act. It is the mental process every human goes through before taking an action. By blinding the target, you destroy the observe phase. The aggressor cannot orient. The aggressor cannot decide. Therefore, the aggressor cannot act. While they are trapped in the whiteout, you strike or you escape. If you must strike, use the bezel of the light, the rim around the lens. Many flashlights have a toothed or crenellated bezel. This concentrates the force of a strike into small points, tearing skin and causing pain compliance. A hard smash of the flashlight bezel into the back of the hand holding a weapon or into the bony bridge of the nose effectively ends the engagement. Finally, we must discuss the most powerful weapon available to you, one that costs $0 and is present in almost every building: gravity. The architect who designed the building unwittingly created a lethal trap known as the stairwell. In a survival situation, the stairwell is the ultimate force multiplier. You must never, under any circumstances, allow yourself to be below the attacker on a staircase. This puts you at a disadvantage in terms of reach and leverage.
You must take the high ground. When you are at the top of a flight of stairs, you possess gravitational potential energy. The attacker below you is fighting against gravity. If you deliver a front kick to the chest or hip of the ascending aggressor, you are not just pushing them back, you are launching them into a chaotic, uncontrollable fall. A fall down a concrete flight of stairs generates impact forces comparable to a low-speed car accident. The human body is not designed to tumble down rigid, sharp-edged steps. Bones break. Skulls crack against concrete. The threat is neutralized not by your strength, but by the relentless pull of the earth. If you are pursued, flee to the stairwell. Wait at the landing. As the aggressor rounds the corner and looks up, that is your moment. Physics favors the one looking down. However, there is a mental component that is more critical than any physical tool I have listed. The $1 weapon is useless if the mind wielding it is paralyzed by civilized morality. You have been trained since birth to be polite, to de-escalate, to avoid conflict, and to play fair. Fairness is a concept for sports, not for survival. In a collapse scenario, the person attacking you has already decided to violate the social contract. They have abandoned fairness. If you cling to it, you die. The urban rules dictate that there are no rules. There is only the binary outcome, survival or elimination. You must cultivate the switch in your brain that allows you to go from a passive office worker to a practitioner of brutal violence in less than 1 second. This is not about anger. Anger makes you sloppy. This is about cold, mechanical efficiency. You must look at a pen and see a perforator. You must look at a coffee cup and see a thermal weapon. You must look at a staircase and see a gravity trap. The world is full of objects waiting to be weaponized. The trap of the consumerist mindset is believing you need to buy safety. You do not buy safety. You manufacture it with your environment and your will. This concludes the inventory of the improvised arsenal. We have covered the piercing power of the pen, the blinding chemistry of alcohol, the crushing weight of the fire extinguisher, and the thermal warfare of the coffee cup. You now possess the knowledge to turn a standard cubicle into a fortress. But knowledge without preparation is merely trivia. The next time you walk into your office, do not look at your computer screen. Look at the room. Identify your weapons. Run the simulation in your mind. If the door bursts open right now, what do you grab? Where do you strike? How do you escape? The prepared mind is the only weapon that cannot be confiscated. Civilization is a shared hallucination. It is a fragile agreement between millions of strangers to pretend that violence is a relic of the past. We agree to follow colored lights at intersections. We agree to exchange pieces of paper for food. We agree that the police will arrive when called. But history is not a straight line of progress. It is a cycle of rising and collapsing complexities. Entropy is the only undeniable law of the universe. Systems degrade. Order dissolves into chaos. When the power grid fails, when the supply chain snaps, or when civil unrest spills over the containment walls, that shared hallucination evaporates instantly. The laws of man are repealed, and they are replaced by the absolute, unforgiving laws of physics. In that moment of transition, the consumer becomes the victim. The consumer has spent a lifetime buying safety. The consumer purchased the alarm system, the insurance policy, and perhaps even the expensive tactical gear that sits pristine in a closet. But the consumer never purchased the mindset. The consumer waits for a savior. The survivor knows that no savior is coming. This manifesto has not just been a list of improvised tools. It is a deprogramming manual. I have shown you how to strip away the veneer of the harmless office environment to reveal the armory hidden beneath. The tactical industry thrives on your feeling of inadequacy. The industry tells you that you are defenseless without their patented steel and their ballistic nylon. This is a lie designed to extract capital from your fear. You are only defenseless if you remain blind to the potential of matter. The stainless steel pen in your pocket is a spear. The fire extinguisher on the wall is a bludgeon and a chemical weapon. The coffee in your mug is a thermal grenade. The chair you sit on is a fortress. These objects do not require a background check. They do not trigger metal detectors. They do not signal to the authorities or the aggressor that you are a threat.
This is your greatest tactical advantage. Asymmetric surprise. The predator selects you because you look weak. The predator sees a soft target, an office worker, a commuter, a pedestrian. The predator expects compliance or panic. The predator does not expect a jagged ceramic edge driven into the facial structure with the force of absolute desperation. By the time the aggressor realizes the mistake, the engagement is over. You have exploited the element of surprise to bridge the gap in physical strength. Harmlessness is not a virtue.
Society confuses harmlessness with peacefulness. A harmless person is incapable of violence and is therefore a victim in waiting. A peaceful person is capable of great violence, but chooses to keep that capacity sheathed until it is necessary. You must stop striving to be harmless. You must strive to be dangerous. To be dangerous is to be safe. To be dangerous is to protect those behind you who cannot protect themselves. The $1 weapon is not the pen. It is not the alcohol. It is not the key. The weapon is your perception. It is the ability to walk into a room and instantly map the kinetic potential of every object. It is the ability to switch off the social programming that tells you to be polite and switch on the biological imperative that tells you to survive. From this day forward, do not look at the world with the eyes of a consumer. Look at it with the eyes of a mechanic of violence. See the leverage, see the density, see the fragility of the human machine. The collapse may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen for 10 years, but on the day the line goes dead and the sirens stop wailing and the rules of the old world burn away, you will not be the one cowering in the corner waiting for help. You will be the one holding the line. You will be the one who recognized that survival was never about what you bought. It was always about what you became.